silk and stitches. Olivia Mendez smoothed her simple navy dress and took a steadying breath before entering the glittering ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. As the owner of Sweet Symmetry Events, she'd designed dozens of celebrations, but the Spencer wedding was her biggest opportunity yet, a chance to break into Manhattan's elite circle of event planners. The bride's father, banking magnate Richard Spencer, had hired her on the recommendation of a satisfied client. Though his wife Camilla seemed perpetually disappointed that they hadn't secured the more established Harrington agency. "You've arranged the orchid centerpieces incorrectly," Camilla announced, appearing beside Olivia during the final walkthrough. "I specifically said white cascading phalaenopsis, not these, whatever these are." She gestured dismissively at the exquisite arrangements Olivia had personally designed. "These are actually rare ghost orchids, Mrs. Spencer," Olivia explained, maintaining her professional smile. "They're more delicate and unique than phalaenopsis, and they complement your daughter's dress perfectly." "Well, I suppose someone of your background wouldn't understand the difference," Camilla replied with a thin smile. Olivia felt the familiar sting but didn't let it show. Growing up in a small apartment above her grandmother's alterations, shop in Queens had taught her to stitch dignity into every interaction. She'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through design school, and no amount of condescension could unravel that achievement. "Actually, my grandmother taught me to identify every flower in the botanical gardens by the time I was 8, Olivia said pleasantly. "She always said beauty deserves to be called by its proper name." From across the room, a tall figure observed the exchange with unexpected interest. Dominic Blackwood, founder of Blackwood Innovations and reluctant best man to the groom, had arrived early to escape the tedium of his empty penthouse. At 40, his technology empire had made him one of New York's most eligible bachelors. But, after his fiancée had revealed she'd only wanted his connections, he'd retreated into his work, letting few people past carefully constructed walls. "Remarkable restraint," he commented, approaching Olivia after Camilla had swept away. "Most people would have wilted under that treatment." Olivia glanced up, momentarily startled by his presence. She recognized him from the financial magazines. Her business partner devoured, but in person, his sharp features seemed softer, more human. "Mr. Blackwood," she acknowledged with a nod. "When you grow up with a grandmother who could silence critics with nothing but a raised eyebrow, you develop thick skin." A slight smile touched his mouth. "James is fortunate to have found someone who values quality over pedigree." "I'm just doing my job," she replied, checking items off her clipboard. "Every couple deserves their perfect day, regardless of budget or background." An admirable philosophy. Unfortunately rare in these circles. His eyes, a striking shade of amber, assessed the room. "You've transformed this space completely. It's unexpected." Olivia felt a small thrill at the genuine appreciation in his voice. "I believe weddings should reflect who people are, not just what they own." Before he could respond, the wedding coordinator Penelope rushed over. "Olivia, the mother-in-law is having a meltdown about the seating chart. She says you've placed her next to her ex-husband's new wife." "Excuse me," Olivia said to Dominic with an apologetic smile. Of course, as she walked away, Dominic found with himself watching her confidence in her stride. The way staff members visibly relaxed when she approached their stations. In an industry built on superficial perfection, her authenticity was as refreshing as it was rare. Later that evening, at the rehearsal dinner, he overheard Camilla Spencer whispering to another socialite, "Can you believe she's handling our Madison's wedding? Apparently she grew up in some little alterations shop. I told Richard we should have hired someone who understands our world." Dominic, normally content to remain silent at such functions, found himself interrupting. "Actually, Mrs. Spencer, I've been to events organized by the Harrington agency you mentioned earlier. Utterly forgettable. What Ms. Mendez has created for your daughter showcases genuine creativity." Camilla's eyes widened at his unexpected intervention. "Well, I suppose if someone of your standing approves." Dominic didn't bother responding, instead catching Olivia's gaze across the room. For the briefest moment, they shared a look of mutual understanding to outsiders who had learned to navigate a world that constantly questioned their right to belong. Neither could have predicted that in just 48 hours, everything would unravel in ways that would change both their lives forever. The cancelled celebration the morning of the Spencer wedding dawned with the kind of pristine clarity that event planners dream about. Olivia arrived at the plaza at 5 a.m., her assistant Rosie trailing behind with coffee and a box of emergency supplies. Everything was proceeding exactly to plan. The floral installations were breathtaking. The custom lighting design cast a golden glow across the grand ballroom, and the hand-calligraphed place cards were arranged in perfect alphabetical order. "We might actually pull this off without a hitch," Rosie whispered, adjusting a slightly tilted orchid. Olivia gave her a cautious smile. "Never say that before noon on wedding day. The universe has ears." As if summoned by her words, Olivia's phone vibrated with a text from the bride's sister Vanessa. "Emergency. Madison's suite." Now. When Olivia arrived at the bridal suite, she found chaos. Madison Spencer sat in a silk robe, mascara streaming down her face, while her bridesmaids hovered uncomfortably around her. "I can't do it," Madison sobbed when she saw Olivia. "James is wonderful, but I don't love him." I've been seeing someone else, my yoga instructor. We're flying to Bali tonight. Olivia's heart sank. 6 months of planning, a $500,000 budget, 400 guests already en route, and now this. But her first concern wasn't for herself. Madison, are you sure? This isn't just cold feet. The young woman looked up, suddenly resolute despite her tears. I've never been more certain of anything. I can't live my mother's version of my life anymore. What followed was the most excruciating 3 hours of Olivia's professional career. Richard Spencer went ashen when informed, while Camilla erupted into hysterics, immediately searching for someone to blame. The groom, James, received the news with a stunned dignity that made Olivia's heart ache for him. Dominic found Olivia in a service corridor, methodically making cancellation calls to vendors. Her voice remained steady and professional despite the circumstances. "You're handling this remarkably well," he observed, leaning against the wall beside her. "Not my first disaster," she replied, briefly covering the phone's microphone, "though, admittedly, it's my first runaway bride. The Spencers are looking for a scapegoat," he warned. "Camilla's already telling guests you failed to notice obvious signs of Madison's reluctance." Olivia closed her eyes briefly. Of course she is. When she finally entered the main hall where family members had gathered, the atmosphere turned glacial. Camilla Spencer stood, her designer dress immaculate despite the emotional hurricane swirling around her. "You," she hissed at Olivia. "If you had been more observant, more professional, this humiliation could have been avoided. What kind of wedding planner doesn't recognize when a bride is having doubts? Mrs. Spencer, I understand you're upset. You've destroyed our family's reputation. Madison was perfectly happy until you started filling her head with all that nonsense about authenticity and personal expression. Now look what's happened." Richard Spencer placed a restraining hand on his wife's arm. "Camilla, this isn't the time." "No, Richard, I want her gone. No payment, no references. In fact, I'll make sure everyone in Manhattan knows exactly how incompetent she is." The room fell silent. Olivia felt the weight of dozens of judgmental stares, the careful foundation of her business crumbling beneath her feet. Years of sacrifice threatened to collapse in a single moment of undeserved blame. "Mrs. Spencer." Dominic's voice cut through the tension as he stepped forward. "Your daughter is an adult who made her own decision. Ms. Mendez is a professional who delivered everything promised in her contract. Your misdirected anger won't change the situation. Stay out of this, Dominic," James said quietly. "It's not your problem. When I see someone being unfairly accused, it becomes my problem." Camilla's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You always were peculiar, Dominic. Perhaps that's why Elise left you at the altar as well." The targeted cruelty of her words hung in the air. For the first time, Dominic's composed expression faltered. Olivia straightened her shoulders. "I'll send a full accounting of expenses and refunds to your office. Mr. Spencer, I'm truly sorry for your family's pain today." With quiet dignity, she gathered her planning binder and walked out of the Plaza Hotel, ignoring the whispers that followed her. By nightfall, her phone was flooded with cancellations from upcoming clients who had heard the Spencers' version of events. The career she had built with such care was unraveling thread by thread. 2 weeks later, Olivia sat in her now empty studio in Chelsea, boxing up the last of her supplies. Sweet Symmetry Events was finished in New York. No high-end client would touch her after Camilla Spencer's vindictive campaign. Her grandmother's voice came through the phone, warm and steady as always. "Come home, McGee. The cottage by the lighthouse is empty. Take some time to breathe by the ocean." "I failed, Abuela," Olivia whispered, tears finally breaking through her composed facade. "No, mi amor. You stood your ground with dignity. Now it's time to find new soil to plant your dreams." That night, Olivia loaded her car with what remained of her business and her life in New York. As the city lights faded in her rearview mirror, she didn't notice the sleek black car that pulled away from the curb behind her building, or the man inside who had come too late to find her. Dominic Blackwood stared at the darkened windows of what had been Sweet Symmetry Events, an unfamiliar feeling of regret settling in his chest. He had come to offer her a proposition, only to discover she had vanished as completely as if she'd never existed at all. Returning to his driver, he made a decision. "Find her," he instructed his head of security, discreetly. For the first time in years, something mattered more to him than the next acquisition or technological breakthrough. Somewhere between witnessing her quiet strength and feeling the sting of Camilla's cruel reminder of his own past, Dominic had recognized something in Olivia Mendez that he couldn't afford to let disappear. *Cisit, set in Depeded Puerto Azul, was exactly what Olivia needed, a small coastal town where her grandmother had retired years ago. The cottage near the lighthouse was simple but charming, with whitewashed walls and windows that caught the morning sun. For the first month, Olivia did little more than sleep, walk along the shore, and help her grandmother with her small alterations business in town. "You're hiding," Abuela observed one evening as they sat on the porch. "Your hands were made for creating beauty, not just mending what others have torn." Olivia sighed, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. "I'm not sure I have it in me to start over." "Nonsense. Mendez, women don't break. We reshape. The town was preparing for its annual spring festival, a modest affair compared to Manhattan. When the committee chairwoman suffered a broken hip, Olivia reluctantly agreed to help. Soon, she found herself transforming the town square with driftwood arches, sea glass installations, and locally grown wildflowers, creating magic with a fraction of her usual budget. 3 months after leaving New York, Olivia stood in the center of the bustling festival, directing local teenagers as they hung strings of lights between trees. The event had drawn visitors from neighboring towns, and for the first time since the Spencer disaster, she felt the familiar satisfaction of seeing a vision come to life. "Impressive what you've accomplished with limited resources," came a voice that stopped her cold. Olivia turned slowly. Dominic Blackwood stood before her, looking oddly out of place in casual clothing, dark jeans, and a simple button-down that somehow still screamed wealth. "How did you find me?" she asked, heart racing inexplicably. "I have resources," he replied, then had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "And I may have tracked your grandmother's address through the Spencer wedding invitation lists." Why? The single word contained all her confusion. "I have a proposal." When her eyes widened, he quickly added, "A business proposal. May I buy you coffee?" At a small cafe overlooking the harbor, Dominic explained his newest venture, Foundry Experiences, a company creating boutique hotels and event venues in overlooked coastal towns, designed to revitalize local economies. "I need someone who understands how to create authentic experiences, not just Instagram backdrops," he concluded. "Someone who sees the potential in places others have dismissed." Olivia studied him skeptically. "And you thought of me, the planner whose career imploded so spectacularly?" "I thought of the woman who created something meaningful despite people who couldn't see past her background." His amber eyes held hers. The Spencer's version of events didn't convince everyone. Olivia. Their conversation stretched into dinner, where Dominic revealed more about his own history growing up in a struggling single-parent household before a coding scholarship changed his trajectory. His success had come at the cost of connection, leaving him surrounded by people who valued his wealth over his worth. "That's why your work stood out," he admitted. "You create spaces where people feel both celebrated and seen." "I'll consider your offer," Olivia said finally. "But I need to know this isn't charity." "I don't do charity," Dominic replied with unexpected intensity. "This is investment in exceptional talent." Foundations built 3 months into their partnership. Olivia and Dominic had established an unexpected rhythm. Their first project, transforming an abandoned cannery into a boutique hotel and event space, was taking shape along Puerto Azul's waterfront. Olivia found herself challenged and invigorated by Dominic's vision, while he discovered that her intuitive understanding of how spaces affected emotions added dimensions he'd never considered. "The restoration crew found these behind the walls," Dominic said one afternoon, handing her a bundle of faded letters from the 1940s, love letters between a cannery worker and a sailor. Olivia's eyes lit up. "We could create a narrative experience throughout the hotels, more nods to their story in different spaces." "That's exactly why I needed you," he said, the simple statement carrying unexpected weight. That worked side by side daily, their professional boundaries gradually softening. Dominic found himself sharing meals with Olivia and her grandmother, experiencing a warmth of family connection long absent from his life. Olivia discovered that beneath his reserved exterior lay a man of surprising humor and depth. When news of their project reached Manhattan, the backlash was swift. The Spencers, still smarting from social embarrassment, began suggesting that Dominic's association with Olivia would damage his business reputation. "People are saying you've lost your edge," his crew warned during a video call, "that you're wasting resources on some small-town redemption project." Dominic's response was uncharacteristically blunt. "People can say whatever they want. The numbers will speak for themselves." The test came when a prominent travel magazine scheduled a feature on innovative hospitality concepts. 2 days before the interview, Olivia received a devastating call. Camilla Spencer had contacted the magazine with her version of the wedding disaster. "They're reconsidering the feature," Olivia told Dominic, voice tight with frustration. "Apparently, my involvement makes the project controversial." She expected him to distance himself to protect his investment. Instead, he made a single call to the magazine's publisher, a college friend. "Either you judge our project on its merits, or I'll give the exclusive to your competitor," he stated simply. "And Julia, if you allow Camilla Spencer's vendetta to influence your editorial decisions, you're not the journalist I thought you were." That night, they sat on the half-finished hotel rooftop, sharing a bottle of wine as stars appeared above the ocean. "Why did you defend me?" Olivia asked. "You could have easily found another designer." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. 6 years ago, I was engaged to a woman named Elise. 2 weeks before our wedding, I discovered she'd been sharing confidential company information with competitors. When I confronted her, she admitted she'd only been interested in my connections." He swirled the wine in his glass. "I built walls after that, focused on acquisitions instead of relationships. Then I watched you handle the Spencers with such dignity, and something shifted." His honesty opened something in Olivia as well. "After the wedding disaster, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But being here, creating something meaningful, I've found parts of myself I didn't know were missing. Their hands met on the weathered wood between them, fingers intertwining with a naturalness that belied their brief acquaintance. We should probably discuss this, Dominic said softly. Probably, Olivia agreed, making no move to pull away. Chandeliers and wildflowers, the grand opening of Lighthouse Bay, their first Foundry Experiences property, exceeded all projections. Travel influencers, luxury magazines, and adventure seekers flocked to Puerto Azul, drawn by the authentic connection to local culture and the seamless integration of luxury with sustainability. What began as a business partnership had evolved into something neither Olivia nor Dominic had anticipated. Their relationship deepened through shared challenges and quiet moments, morning walks along the shore, late-night strategy sessions that turned into deeper conversations, the gradual revelation of fears and dreams long kept private. The Wellington Hotel in Manhattan wants us to redesign their ballroom, Olivia announced one morning, reading from her tablet. They specifically requested the Mendez aesthetic. Dominic smiled, watching her excitement. Vindication? No, she replied thoughtfully. Just recognition that authentic work speaks for itself. The irony wasn't lost on either of them when they received an invitation to James Spencer's second wedding, this time to a childhood friend he'd reconnected with after Madison's departure. The ceremony would be held at Lighthouse Bay, their creation having become the most sought-after venue on the coast. We don't have to attend, Dominic offered, knowing how the memories might affect her. Olivia considered this before shaking her head. No, I think it's important to close that chapter properly. The day of the wedding, Camilla Spencer froze upon seeing Olivia greeting guests in the courtyard, Dominic at her side. The older woman's face flushed with recognition and something like shame. Mrs. Spencer, Olivia acknowledged with a polite nod. Miss Mendez, Camilla replied stiffly. Your venue is quite impressive. Thank you. I hope you and your family find joy in today's celebration. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but a recognition that the past had shaped rather than defined her future. Later, watching James exchange vows with a woman who clearly adored him, Olivia felt the final weight of that failed wedding lift from her shoulders. 6 months later, Dominic and Olivia stood in the same courtyard under a canopy of stars and string lights. Their own wedding was nothing like the extravagant affairs Olivia once designed. Instead, it reflected the journey that had brought them together. Locally crafted tables held her grandmother's hand-embroidered linens. Fishermen's lanterns illuminated pathways to the shore. The centerpieces combined wildflowers with sea glass collected from their morning walks. You could have had chandeliers and imported orchids, Abuela teased as she adjusted Olivia's simple lace dress made from fabric found in the cottage attic. I have everything I need, Olivia replied, watching through the window as Dominic welcomed guests with an ease that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Their vows, exchanged at sunset, with a lighthouse beam sweeping over the horizon, spoke of foundations built on understanding rather than expectations, of seeing worth beyond wealth, of finding home in each other rather than in any place. At the reception, Richard Spencer approached them, offering congratulations without his wife's company. Madison sends her best from Bali, he said awkwardly. She wanted me to thank you, Ms. Mendez. For what? Olivia asked, surprised. For creating a space where she could finally be honest about what she wanted. He glanced at Dominic. Sometimes the wrong wedding leads to the right realization. As they danced under the stars, Dominic held Olivia close. Imagine if you'd planned the perfect Spencer wedding, he murmured. We might never have found each other. Olivia smiled up at him. I believe my grandmother calls that el destino, destiny. Their stories spread through Manhattan's social circles like wildfire. The event planner they had rejected had found success on her own terms, partnering with one of New York's most eligible bachelors to create a hospitality empire built on authenticity rather than pretense. But for Olivia and Dominic, the greatest victory wasn't in proving others wrong, it was in finding someone who saw past surfaces to substance, who valued strengths built through struggle, who understood that the most beautiful designs emerge from reimagining what others discard. As they built their life and their company together, they carried this understanding into every space they created, that true worth isn't measured by pedigree or price tags, but by the courage to remain authentic even when the world demands conformity.